Hey YouTube, how's it going? Good old friend Death here. Today's episode, we're gonna be doing a scary story. Not just any scary story though, we have a crossover from channel 81. Link down in the description to his page because he has a lot of stories he does narrate. And I hope you guys find this story good and scary and go over and like his page and give him a follow. Alright, without further ado, let's go hear the story about ants.
He had already killed one that day. There would be more. The ants kept coming. He and his girlfriend had sprayed and laid traps. For a few days, there were no signs of the tiny pests, alive or dead. But then his girlfriend noticed a few by the bedroom window. Then he noticed one crawling on the living room windowsill. Then he smeared two on his leg one night. He had already killed one that day when he realized there would be no winning this war. He was off from work that day. His girlfriend had to work, but would be back at noon for lunch. He flipped through 100 channels for an hour, ate breakfast, washed his dishes, and looked out the living room window at the empty parking lot below. He saw no movement from outside the neighboring buildings. However, a quiver of movement caught his attention. The windowsill. Inside, two tiny specks of brown, twiddling, scurrying in roundabout arcs. He crushed them with his thumb. He was about to wash his finger off, but he saw more on the window itself. 4, 5, 6 more ants? He went into the kitchen and grabbed the ant killer. The spray bottle was getting a lot of use lately, but it was still half full. Returning to the window, the man saw the scurrying had doubled. Faster, faster, more. He squeezed the trigger and soaked the ants. They continued to move about for a few seconds until they finally slowed down. He sprayed them again and then went around the small apartment, spraying the windows, baseboards, drains, any openings, any possible entryways for the ants to invade his territory. Finally, he wiped the dead ants up with a wet paper towel. He told his girlfriend at lunch about the ants, and she insisted that they continue to be vigilant. They ate. She left. He decided to spend the afternoon watching a movie. No sooner had he started the movie that his arm started to itch. He looked and saw no bite, no mark. He scratched anyway. The itching persisted. He got up from the couch and checked the couch for any ants. He saw none. A prickle on the back of his neck. He reached back and so happened to see the window twitch. He squeezed his eyes closed briefly and saw more ants on the glass. He left the ant killer next to the window. He knew he'd need it again. He snatched it up and sprayed the window. The ants were on the outside. He looked down the building and saw ants in a thin trail up and down the wall. He wondered if his downstairs neighbors were having the same problems. He set the bottle down and went back to the couch. His neck still itched. Now his crotch. He stopped the movie and took a shower. The movie was over and he was asleep. The window was clear. And then, a singular dot of brown appeared at the bottom of the window, outside. The man woke and remained silent. He thought he could hear a squishing sound, as if someone was walking through muted mud. He couldn't pinpoint where the sound was coming from, or if he was still dozing. He turned to the window and saw the ant halfway up the glass. He was awake now. He got up and saw the ant was on the inside. He bent to pick up the bottle and saw an ant on the back of his hand. He laid his finger on it to squash it and felt a pinprick of pain. He squashed it and his finger went into his hand deeper than it should have. He looked at his hands and saw ants scurry from the bottoms of his hands up and over to the tops. His thumbs were covered in brown and black. He shook his hands frantically, but they wouldn't come clean. His hands felt tingly as if the blood flow was returning to them. He slapped his left hand against the window and his hand dissipated into tiny black ants which scattered over the window and wall. His mind shut down then, only to open slightly to allow for one last thought. One last action. He grabbed the ant killer with his dark static hands and managed to twist open the bottle. His entire body tingled now. He raised the bottle to his lips and tipped its clear contents into his mouth and then onto his face. But by then, it was too late. She was outside with her 10-month-old. She was smoking a cigarette, looking up at the second-floor apartment window. Her boy was playing in a small patch of grass, gooing and gogging. She smiled at him, then returned her attention to the apartment above. She still couldn't believe what had gone on up there. She met her neighbors shortly after they moved in, and they seemed normal, nice. She talked to them when they would pass on their ways to and fro. Nothing the couple said or did suggested the terrible scene that would befall them. She shivered. She stamped out her cigarette on the sidewalk and walked over to her baby boy. He was chattering quite happily. She smiled down at him. He looked up and smiled back. A small black ant on his baby thumb.